think we can be on each on one side, and
Yeah.
maybe we change places also if we think we need to move. Can switch sides. Yeah.
So how we start? Who start to say welcome?
I will start with welcome, and then I present you. Then you present me.
There's something wrong with just crackle on that.
It was red. Must be your pacemaker. Not yet. I know the program, so
Okay.
I can tell the program, so you don't have to worry.
And I don't have I have I don't.
Sorry.
This is
The early stuff. Yeah.
early stuff, so.
Mm.
But so who go first?
So first it's James Wilde,
Yes.
then it's Stefan, then it's Joy Ashry.
Interrupt you again. I think your headset is
Okay.
broken, so get another one.
Oh, it's the headsets that
Yeah, I
messes
think
it.
so.
Okay.
The cable is.
Right.
Thank you. I'm happy with the microphone. James?
Yeah, so James, Stefan, Joy Ashry, and then after that, it doesn't matter. We can just take them in the order they're sitting. So it's
They will be sitting and we
yeah,
stand.
yeah. So after James and Stefan, we ask them to come up and all sit on the. Yeah. And time is moving only in one direction and moving fast.
Just
I see
one.
15. That's unusual for an industry event.
Exactly,
Yeah?
because it doesn't really help.
I don't know if we should we wait 5 minutes or start on time? What do you think? Benoit doesn't even have his headset on yet. We should start, right? Time.
This one's perfect. So it was circumstances. Sit up on the stage or
No, start down here and then go up on the stage when we start the panel. Okay. So, welcome everyone to this session on industry, energy efficiency, and deep decarbonization. The moderators today is Benoit Lebeau. He's head of IPEC, International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation. So we have a very qualified moderator on that topic.
And I'm not the only moderator. I'm just co-moderating with Professor Lars Nilsson from University of Lund. And if I am indeed a specialist of energy efficiency policy, Lars is known for his work on deep decarbonization. And the topic of this session this afternoon is the deep decarbonization and the role of energy efficiency and resource efficiency for the industry. And for the first part, Lars.
Yes, exactly. And we will move through those topics. We'll move on different geographical scales. We thought about the facilitative dialogue points, which are: where are we? Where do we want to go? How do we get there? And I think we know where we want to go, so that's clear in this session. We will talk a little bit about where we are, but we will try to focus more on how do we get there in the end. We have 2 introductory presentations. Then we have a panel of people who will make short statements before we go into a discussion with the panel. So, first we ask Mr. James Wild from the Carbon Trust to take the stage with your opening statements, please.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lars. Thank you, Benoit. So my name's James Wild. I'm from the Carbon Trust. And to that point about how do we get there, I'm going to present a new initiative that we've been working with UNIDO on under SE4All, a global industrial energy efficiency accelerator funded by the GEF, which is all about trying to create a step change in energy efficiency in industry globally. Very much the how do we get started, how do we get going. The opportunity in industry is very, very significant. Industrial energy consumption increased by 41% over the last 20 years. The growth in developing economies, growing economies, has been very significant. 83% growth in energy consumption in industry. When you add it up, that's close to 30% of all energy, of all greenhouse gas emissions coming from industry. There's a very significant energy efficiency opportunity in industry. IEA looked at it and found out that 60% of that opportunity is still to be untapped, to be tapped. And it is cost effective. A lot of that opportunity pays back within 2 years. Typically about 10 to 15% improvement within 2 years payback. When you actually start looking at some of the more innovative things that one can do on energy efficiency, you can get up to a 30% improvement. But some of those technologies need to be demonstrated and proven across the market. But there are barriers. There's behavioural barriers around awareness of the opportunity, about trust and time to get understanding of the solutions, but then also finance is a big challenge for large parts of the market. So the Energy Efficiency Accelerator platform within SE4All works across quite a few different sectors, and the Industrial Energy Efficiency Accelerator is one of those, that family of accelerators. There's one on buildings, there's one on district energy, lighting, vehicle fuel efficiency, appliances, and then industry. So I'll talk a bit about more the industry one. We're a little bit more nascent. We've just got going, really. Some of the other accelerators have been going for a while. And as I said, our objective is to create a step change in energy efficiency across 15 countries in the first instance by 2025. Our goal is to work in those countries with the leaders, the key leaders across different stakeholder groups. So international institutions active in those countries, governments, industry, financiers, and the energy service market, the energy service providers and the technology providers. And we want to build on what's already there. So things that have been tried and maybe expired, things that are existing, and then create new initiatives to fill gaps. It's important as well that this is a global initiative, because what we want to do is share lessons across countries, see what works in one place or what doesn't work, and then move those lessons across to other countries. 4 key pillars we're looking to work on to try and create that step change in energy efficiency, and it links to the barriers. It's really important there's strong drivers in place. So we'll be looking to develop new policy measures to create that driver for energy efficiency. Next is capacity building, making sure there's a strong market that can deliver the energy efficiency opportunity. And a big aspect of that is the work that UNIDO do around ISO 50001 rollout, and it's a big work stream within IPEAC that Benoit is working on. Next is developing a pipeline of investable opportunities, to providing the advice and awareness raising to firms to create that pipeline of opportunity. And then finance, developing financing solutions to unlock the capital, to really drive a market transformation. So we're looking to create a real step change in energy efficiency performance in the countries we work in. The first step is a diagnostic to work out where the gaps are in each country, starting with what is the target market. So we'll analyse in detail in the industrial sector and work out the sources of energy demand and the breakdown of the industry and where the opportunities are for energy efficiency. And then we'll look at the drivers. What is energy pricing? What policies are in place already to drive energy efficiency performance? Then we'll look at the supply chain and its relative maturity in each country. Understand the remaining barriers to the adoption of energy efficiency. Then we'll look at, well, how can we build on what's there and create some additional levers across those 4 areas that I described before. And critically, we want to create something that's sustainable. Often you find that one has a program that lasts a couple of years and then it stops and then the market stops. This is all about trying to transform the market so that it can be sustainable in the longer term. We're at the moment, as I say, we're relatively nascent, so we're selecting which countries to work in. And we've done some analysis across 50 countries to work out, well, first of all, the size of the opportunity, the importance of industry. Next, looking at the market maturity. So we've been looking at the World Bank's RISE data to understand, well, what policies are in place. There's an interesting dilemma there. It makes sense to work somewhere where there is some policies and some action already so we can build on it so you're more likely to get tangible impact rather than somewhere where there's very little so it's hard to move. Then we'll look at the ease of doing business in that country and also a platform that we can build off. You need to have very significant operations around the world. We've developed about 15 different energy efficiency advice and finance programs. So looking where we can build off existing presence or existing programs. And then commitment. Critically, this is about working with governments that are committed to drive change across those 4 levers that I described before. The engagement is started. And the countries that we're looking to potentially work with in the first phase intensively are China, Mexico, India, Brazil, and Morocco. And we're going to have a presentation from Morocco briefly. And so we are getting to the point where senior government officials have signed letters of support to move forward with the programme. But we're also interested in engaging with a broader set of countries. And Malaysia, Turkey, and Indonesia are examples of countries that are on that longer list. So, as I say, we're at a relatively nascent stage, and we're really, really keen to get input and support for this programme, both at the country level and at the global level. So, all input would be much appreciated.
Thank you, James. Thank you. So this is the low-hanging fruit, in a sense, even though it might be difficult to pick it. We'll move on to the next speaker because we'll take questions and discussion later. Stefan Lechtenböhmer from Wuppertal Institute, please.
Okay, yes. Thank you for the introduction and invitation to speak here. And so, Mula to everybody, or hello in English, or today we would rather say here, hello, because that's the traditional carnival word you say at this time of the year. But I'm not going to expand on Carnival. I'm going to tell you something on the deep decarbonization of energy-intensive industries, which is very much about the state where we want to be. So deep decarbonized in energy-intensive industries. And if you look at this chart, we already heard how important industry is in global greenhouse gas emissions. So it's depending on how you count, 40% of CO2 or more than 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions. But if you then go to 5 main products, so steel, cement, plastics, paper, and aluminium, they make more than half of that. Only those 4 products. And these are, of course, inevitable products. You ever see them. You're sitting currently on a chair with a lot of plastics and steel legs, etc. So that's really important field. And the use of materials has been growing significantly over the last years and is predicted to grow at very high pace in the future. So there's a graph by IEA expecting, for example, aluminum to almost double by 2030. After that, they think it will level off. Maybe we will see afterwards. Other products increase less sharp, but still significantly. So you see, it's really an important point. It's an issue, this fast-growing material demand in the processing industries. So those industries that convert resources, ores, and others into materials that then go into the other industry, the manufacturing that make cars, chairs, houses, everything out of that. So that's really an important field of industry, and it's particularly important with regards to decarbonization because decarbonization is particularly difficult here. In many other fields, we already have the technology. We could go electrification. We have heat pumps, etc., pretty efficient opportunities. It's still, as Lars said, it's maybe low-hanging fruits, but it's difficult to get them often. But here, we don't even have the fruits. So we are just working on the ideas how to decarbonize these fields. And I may go briefly through the strategies. So the one important field is in this sector is recycling. So use less of these materials. Go for recycled materials. That's obvious, but it's still a lot to be done. So secondary materials are much more efficient than primary materials. For steel, it's 80% more efficient. For aluminum, it's even 95%, and those two things are basically recyclable all of the time. But we are still only using less than 15% in these countries of materials from secondary material. So there's a long way to go, and there are two main obstacles here. The one, those materials are, of course, produced and traded on a global scale. So maybe this chair you're sitting on is coming from China. So how to close those global loops? That's really a tricky thing. And the other main important thing is currently we have lots of policies. This country, Germany, has for more than 20 years a circular economy law. However, that is in fact only a waste law. So much of the policy is so far only on waste and not on really recycling those materials. So there's a long way to do, but that is one of the options. Just produce less of these materials and have the same outcome, same welfare, etc. And the next important strategy, I left out energy efficiency. We had that in the other presentation. It's also important here. But if we really want to go to deep decarbonization, we have to do more than efficiency. We have to do all the efficiency we can, definitely, but we have to do more. We have to go to, as IPCC calls it, emissions efficiency. And that's basically three strategies. This is carbon capture and store. So we can try to capture the carbon out of the chimneys of the industry. That may be an important solution, for example, for cement industry, where we have process-related emissions coming from the materials you use to make the cement. And it's pretty difficult to really go down to zero with them. So we might use carbon capture and storage there. However, it's also a tricky end-of-the-pipe strategy that uses much more energy, so it's not energy efficient. Then, of course, we have bio-based feedstock. That's a very good solution. We can do very much things with bioenergy. There's good properties and good options to use that as fuels, as feedstocks, or directly as wood in the chairs, for example. However, our biogenic resources are pretty limited. So it's pretty difficult to source that amount of materials that we use. And you have seen the figure, how steep it's growing up. We cannot imagine that we have that much biomasses to produce all those materials, plus the energy and the food. I mean, we might all, at least most in this room, might do with a little less food or a diet which uses less, but it's a point. And of course, the last point then is renewable electricity. So basically, electricity system has been very successful recently in order to decarbonize, and renewable electricity could be an option. Use it in industry, but with these factories, with a steel mill, that's not that easy. Often technologies have to be invented. Other than in the building sector and transport sector, they are not more efficient than the conventional technologies. If you go to renewable electricity-based feedstocks, so-called power-to-X, power-to-chemicals, that uses extremely high amount of electricity, and we, in spite of all the successes we have, we need to produce that still. So these are some of the problems in these fields. However, this is an important issue, and there has to be done a lot of work on it. And it's not that way that is not being done. So industry is step by step awakening to this. But we have interesting examples. maybe this is one example from Duisburg, a city some 50 kilometers down the river here outside. There is one of the largest German and European steel sites, and they are thinking of linking the steel to the renewable energy and to the chemical industry. And you see all those bubbles. Of course, that's not easy. When you make the steel and the coke, you have lots of gases, huge amounts. But in these gases, there's lots of chemicals, interesting stuff in principle. So how to separate this and make different chemicals. So they are written polymers, OME, which is the fuel, methanol, alcohols, etc. And so they convened lots of research institutes, companies. All companies' names you see are major industrial German companies in order to make that happen. And this is only one example. Maybe not even the farthest reaching examples, but they have understood they have to do something about the carbon in their product. And I will give you 2 other examples. One is again from our region here, North Rhine-Westphalia. You see that on the map, basically in the center of Europe. And this is the industrial heart of Germany and also to a lot of extent of Europe. More than 10% of energy-intensive industries of Europe are here. And we made a climate protection plan with the state, one of those so-called non-state actors, or as they say, stakeholders, non-party stakeholders, which is more correct. It's a state of 18 million, and we made a big process with our industries in order to understand each other better and to go for these potentials and to have more of these projects. A lot of work to do, but we have started in creating networks with industry. And yesterday we had a big conference with them on these examples and on what to do. And on the other side, you see an example from the port of Rotterdam, which is one of the largest chemical clusters in Europe. So port is a bit misleading. It's also one of the largest ports in Europe, but it's also a big petrochemical cluster. And they decided to go to decarbonize, and we developed pathways with them how they could do that. And they are really following them. They really started to do. So some examples are already happening there, just to show you them. However, examples are not enough. I think we need more to go to get there. And I think what we need to get there is an integrated industrial policy, but a different policy than is known. You all probably are aware that industrial policy hasn't a good fate. So it has been typically used to protect industries, often old industries, inefficient industries. I don't need to mention the name of the American president who does that very well, but it's not him. All the other politicians in my country, in your country, they are not telling it that loud, but they're doing the same. So that's the problem of industrial policy. However, we need a new industrial policy which follows new paradigms. So, and to make it very short, let me say, it needs to be target-oriented towards climate change and sustainability. Because industrial policy, and I think I have showed some points of that, will be one of the main policies to achieve climate protection. So it has to be a target-oriented industrial policy to achieve climate protection and industrial growth, jobs, innovation at the same time, and not seeing them as opposites. Of course, therefore, it has to be integrated. Integrate innovation policy, integrate trade policy, because when you start with the innovative steel plant, it's maybe not competitive, and so you need to be protected for a certain time. All these things need to be integrated in this policy, resource policy, etc. And of course, it has to be inclusive. So all societal stakeholders have to be in that. Otherwise, you won't find the acceptance for that. So this is, I think, what we need, very general, but I hope the discussion will bring more details on that. So let me close with Vinaka. I know that's Fijian for thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you. So could we please ask all the panelists to take the stage, sit up here, you also, and James, please. And while you take your seats, I just realized, Benoit, that we haven't presented our audience here. We don't know who they are. How many of you are from industry? A few people from industry, yeah, that's very good. And how many from academia?
Wow.
fair amount, yeah. Government policy, so that's nice. We have a nice mix and a much better gender balance than yesterday, Stefan, right? So, you've been introduced, and then we have from Morocco.
So from Morocco, we have now a series of introduction to some topics. So from Morocco, Saïd Moulin, who is director of the National Agency in charge of energy efficiency.
Yeah. And then we have Joashri Roy from India, Calcutta, and also a convening lead author in the industry chapters in the IPCC assessment reports, expert in this field.
And then next to Joashri, we have Arthur Ring-Metzger from the DG Climate from the European Commission.
And last but not least, Rana Ghunaim. Is that correct spell? UNIDO. Very welcome, all of you. You will each make an introductory statement. We'll start with Joashri because you had a few slides you wanted to show. So I don't know if you want to stand up here and click them. Maybe that's easier.
How does it work?
Yeah, it should be, yeah.
What I would like to say is that Indian industries have been, since mid-90s, doing on their own lot of energy efficiency actions for their advancement. And if you look into that, then you can see that in 70s, if someone wanted to know how much energy, how energy consumption grows with the industrial activity growth, you can see that it's the same rate of growth. But from mid-90s onwards, you can see the gap between the blue line and the yellow line, which shows that yellow line shows how energy consumption grows and how the activity grows. And look into the years starting from 2000, where you see that the blue line shows how the industrial activity is growing and how yellow line shows how the energy consumption in the industries are going. So it means that energy consumption is growing at much lesser rate compared to the activity growth, and this is happening due to the green line, which is going down, which shows the energy intensity improvement or energy efficiency improvement. So there has been a lot which is going on, and this is before India government took another policy, which is enhanced energy efficiency improvement. So that is a policy intervention in response to climate action. And that I'm not showing here. So this is just a business as usual, how this is really happening. And so we wanted to know that how much they are spending while doing all these activities. And we could see that, as we all said, that low-hanging fruit is energy efficiency improvement, but then there has been material change and some other fuel switch activities and raw material change which has happened. So you can see that Indian industries, all the large energy-intensive industries, are spending quite a bit on different actions. And if you look into the levelized cost of carbon, it goes up to even $100 per ton of carbon. And we wanted to know from the companies why they are doing that. So they said that it's the cost competitiveness which makes them to take this action. So industries do respond to the market, and they have clear competitiveness in mind, and so that they try to bring down their cost of production to keep themselves competitive. And so you can see that all these leadership initiative by the Indian industries led to many policy changes, and which has led to the National Enhanced Energy Efficiency Mission to incentivize the leaders who are doing better. And then there is energy certificates market, which is like UETS market, which is perform, achieve, and trade. And then there is a coal cess, which is like coal tax, which is quite expensive for the industries nowadays. And what more? So does the story end here with the energy efficiency? Can there be more what Indian industries can do and industry sector can do? So what we wanted to know was that if there is a global carbon price, and if Indian industries need to respond to that, what will happen, how they will respond. The answer came from here is that really the big part of it has to come from non-energy intensive industries where much need to happen, added to what is happening in other industrial sectors. But one more important thing is that it's not just the industry sector which can do it. Unless the electricity, there is going to be huge electrification. And if that happens, then the electricity needs to be decarbonized. And where we see that most of it has to be coming from, if it is fossil fuel, because till 2050, I do not see fossil fuel is going to go away from the Indian scenario. And so there needs to be